everyone. I wish I was with you today. I'm afraid I couldn't make it, but I really look forward to meeting you next time. Today, I want to just talk about why I think corporate VCs are a bit like startups, and in a way, what's similar between startups and CVCs. And this is coming from an article I wrote a while back about 14 tips to entrepreneurs about how to think about starting a startup inside a large company. But given that today the audience is corporate venturing experts, I'm just going to talk about how it relates to setting up a CVC. What I'm hoping is that it generates debate and questions. So I will try to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A. So TDK Ventures, very quickly, we are technology-focused CVC. We have presence in Silicon Valley, Boston, and Tokyo, and we invest globally. So we really look at early-stage startups on a worldwide basis. We invested in US, Canada, Israel, Shanghai, and so on. And you can see the team we have today. But we didn't start that big. We started with 4 people, and for 2 years, we were 4 people. The 4 you see here, starting from the right, Toshi, Andrew, Anil, and myself. But the idea started in July 2018 when I was attending a Stanford program. It launched a year later after all the negotiations and board approvals and so on. But the first investment happened a month after. Of course, the due diligence started even before we launched. And for 2 years, we were just 4. And we had really amazing support from all of TDK, all during that time. So my outline for today is, it started with just an idea. I'll talk about how to begin, surrounding yourself with the right people, creating the right culture, and making sure your vision comes true. And that's true whatever your why is about. So it starts with an idea. So my advice to entrepreneurs, but that's the same for those in the audience who are thinking about starting your own CVC, is pay attention if you keep thinking about doing it. But have this kind of approach of trust and verify. Trust your vision, but verify it's the right vision. So make sure that you ask many, many people what they think and why it would be a bad idea. But don't become discouraged. I can tell you, even early on, the idea of TDK Ventures was not a done deal. There was probably about 10 no's I received from my boss, from my boss, from the head of corporate planning, from the head of corporate venturing. It was not easy. And on top of that, TDK had many examples of failures of investing in startups before. And that weighted heavily in the no I received. But the idea came back, and my passion just grew stronger. I was more and more convinced this is the right path for a company like TDK to explore innovations. So make sure that fear and doubts just fuel your learning process. How to begin? So this is really my view, and in a way I had an advantage, which is I was not from corporate venturing. I had never done corporate venturing. So it was very easy for me to assume I knew nothing. Because I knew nothing, most of you in the audience, you already know a little, if not a lot. So make sure that if you start your journey of setting up a CVC, assume you know nothing. Prime your mind to be open for learning and be humble, very humble, and be ready to learn, but also to unlearn. So for example, if some of you are in the M&A team, there is a lot of things that you might want to unlearn when it applies to investing as a corporate VC. But commit to a steep learning curve. In my case, I had a day job when I was proposing the project. For a year and a bit, after we launched TDK Ventures, I was only 50% of my time on TDK Ventures. The other 50% was still my other job that I had to transfer to someone else. And so in a way, we were 4 people, but it was really more like 3.5. Absorb as much information as you can. One of the things that I've done about assuming that I knew nothing and absorbing as much as possible was to just interview the best people in corporate venturing. I know Paolo just presented earlier today. He's one of them that I interviewed. And I can tell you, he was my interview 40 plus, and I learned so much from him. So make sure that you have an open mind every time you talk to people, because you're going to learn something new. I think I did 44 interviews so far of top CVC practitioners. Every single interview, I'm learning something new. And dedicate yourself to being prepared. Now, I'm going back to the why, and I just mentioned Paolo, and one of the things that I loved about my interview with Paolo was he was so clear about the why and all the strategic collaborations, and it was like collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. And if you are clear about your why and your design of your CVC applies to that why, you're going to be able to message this to entrepreneurs very well, and you're going to be able to deliver on your why. So always, especially in the design phase, always ask yourself, why is my idea critical to my company's ability to thrive in the future? And don't stop until you have absolute clarity. And once you have that clarity, then you can start doing the design. You can start to engage with the right partners. You can start to engage with the right colleagues, and so on. And of course, it's an iterative process. So revisit, refine, repeat, and maybe you can feel it already, but that should be the same for you. Enthusiasm is contagious. So make sure that you have that. And don't lose sight of your core idea. So you were clear about why you started, so keep that. Include all the advice, but it doesn't mean that you incorporate all the advice. Make sure you just listen and you decide which ones you should take in and which ones you don't. At the end of the day, it's like a startup. You have to have your convictions. So our why for TDK Ventures is actually the same why as TDK. We want to embrace the digital, energy, and environmental transformations that the future needs. And so our chairman, who at the time was my CEO, my boss, Ishiguro-san, basically said, TDK is a company that exists for the purpose to contributing to society. And what that means is we only make investments for projects from entrepreneurs that contribute to society, that contribute to a healthier planet. And so what that means is we're looking at transitioning TDK from our core skills and core component selling advantage in power, materials, and sensors into this mega trend that we believe we can contribute and we can do really well with entrepreneurs and with partners. Back to the how to begin, I've mentioned that word again, but be humble. Don't enter conversations to brag or impress. Just forget your ego and aspire, see what to aspire to, but also what pitfalls to avoid. So I spent a lot of time asking people about why CVCs fail. I spent a lot of time about it because I realized that corporate VCs, especially when I started, but I think it's going to start again because we have so many new CVCs now entering the marketplace, we can call it that way. They had a bad reputation. And so what that meant is you may have the benefit of the doubt once, if that, but you won't have it twice. And so if you're not doing what you said you're going to do, or if you're starting to make mistakes that other CVCs were doing in the past, you're going to be very quickly seen as a bad actor, which means you won't have the good projects coming your way, which means you can't actually have the right collaborations with your corporation, and you're not going to be able to bring the value that you set for. The second one is really about embrace the no. Get used to it. You're going to have a lot of no, especially when it's about setting a CVC in a company that's been established for a long time. There is a reason you didn't have a CVC before, so you're going to have a lot of no. When I proposed the TDK Ventures project, I actually did not know that, but there was nearly every year someone in TDK proposing to do a corporate VC for TDK. So when I came to present to the CEO after all the no's that I mentioned to you, I didn't know I was in a long line of people who had been declined. So get used to the no. And the way to look at it, in my view, is that when someone says no, you should say, why? And try to understand it as yes, but only if. Because at the end, there are no's which would be a showstopper. But in my case, all the no's was more about no because of. And the because of was never a reason that would distract from my why, from why I wanted to do TDK Ventures. And so getting all these no's helped the project to become stronger and more anti-fragile. But sometimes you have to realize that some no's was because I was not communicating well my project. I was not explaining the why well enough. And so all these no's also helped me to refine the messaging. And in a way, it primed the messaging also for later to be very crisp when I was meeting with entrepreneurs. And now we are talking about the people. So I have 3 slides on just that topic. One is find your ally. Look at who is going to be helping you in your organization. In my case, it was someone amazing called Taro Ikushima. He was at the time the head of corporate planning. Now he's the CEO of a business company, so he's doing really well. He was already convinced on the same why as a vision. And our vision was really about understanding these mega trends that are going to shift and disrupt the core business of TDK. And so we really wanted to have this ability to see in the future and to be able to make bets into these views of the future that may or may not happen. And so here the value to find your ally is to really educate you and your idea and to make sure it's well received by leadership. And Taro really helped me to understand what the management was worried about or even scared about doing a CVC. So that was really good to remove many of the barriers. Find your coach. And here I used to say it's a golf teacher. And the reason I say golf teacher is because I started learning golf by myself without a teacher. And then it took me a long time with a golf teacher to unlearn all the bad practices I had. But remember when I said a CVC doesn't have the benefit of the doubt? You can't afford to make mistakes. So you should really avoid having this unlearning step after learning the bad practices. So make sure that you find a good coach, someone that can really help you to know how to do venture capital well. It's not even CVC well, it's venture capital well, because you're going to co-invest with top financial VCs. And if you don't understand how financial VCs think and work, you're going to have problems. In my case, I had an amazing coach, and he's still my coach, Paul Holland, who was 20 years GP, general partner at Foundation Capital, one of the top financial VC in the Silicon Valley. And he was starting a practice at Mac 49, which was all about helping CVCs. I think I was his client number 3. Okay, so it was just starting. And here the value is really connecting with people who have the expertise that fills the gaps of your own. And I can tell you, when I proposed the project of TDK Ventures, I had never done a CVC. I had never worked in a CVC. I had never done corporate venturing. I had an engineering background that moved into product marketing, product management, sales, and ecosystem. That was my next step in my career. And so I had a lot of gaps, and I knew I needed a coach. But what I would say is, even if you already have good knowledge, try to find a good coach. It doesn't hurt. And then find experts. And there we have so many experts, I don't have photos for all of them, but acknowledging you need help is not an admission of weakness. It's a way of strengthening your plan. So do your due diligence when you meet people who say they're experts, because that I've seen a lot, is you see people who say, oh, I am very, very good at venture capital. And then I would be thinking, well, if you're that good, why are you not a general partner at a financial VC? There's something that doesn't connect with me. If you're a consultant asking for hourly rates or monthly rates, and you say you're extremely good at venture capital, something doesn't compute. So make sure you do your due diligence like you would do a due diligence on a startup. And then creating the right culture, and it's also back to the why. Keep on the why, bake in the best practices right at the start, ask a lot of inputs, but refine. So don't distract yourself from the why. And this is maybe it's obvious, but it's important to say. Always ask open questions. For example, you could keep asking everyone you meet, what are the pitfalls you have experienced? It's amazing how community, all of you in the room today, how willing we are to share our mistakes, our learnings along the way. And this is something which is not true for all ecosystems, but the corporate venturing ecosystem is so generous. Take advantage, ask questions, people are willing to help. And then make sure you align with the DNA of your company. In TDK, like I showed our chairman's mission, it starts from 86 years ago when TDK was starting, and it's in the charter. It's all about contributing to society. So what that means is TDK Ventures is not going to invest in a startup that works in military applications or e-cigarettes. That's not for us. So make sure you align with that too. So when I talk about culture, we also kind of reverse engineered our core values at TDK Ventures. And we call them the Code of Conduct, CODE. But the first one, C, for contributing to society, is right from TDK. There is no ambiguity. We want to do well and we want to do good. The O is for one team reaching for the skies. We are always trying to recruit with diversity, make sure we are very inclusive. Everyone has a voice. We do diverse advocate sessions when we want to make investment where everyone in the team can speak, but they can only speak to say why we should not invest. So no one is allowed to speak to say, oh, I like your proposal, we should invest. None of that. It's only about why we should not invest. And at the end of the diverse advocate session, the investment director will take in. It's quite brutal. And the day after, they will decide if they want to go ahead or not. And half of the time, they decide to stop because they realize they had too many blind spots. The D is for delivering deep insights, which is our raison d'être. This is why TDK Ventures was starting. This is our why, very strong why. And so we are really conscious about sharing all our insights back to TDK, but not on a startup per startup basis, but as a mega trend. So we're extremely respectful to all the information we receive from startups, never to share, but only the mega trends, what we're seeing. And so far, we've written what we call TDK Ventures briefings, 31 of them. So you can see that we have done 31 deep explorations so far. And the E is entrepreneurs first, and this is really coming from my sales background, where I see the entrepreneurs as our customers, as the heroes of our story. And that's also why we do a Net Promoter Score survey on all our entrepreneurs. And the investment thesis is, again, back to the why. We want to understand these mega trends on the right side. We know our competency in fundamental material science, and we're going to invest along the way. And so if you think about our two funds, so the idea was born in 2018, we are already serving, I didn't say investing, I said serving 26 portfolio companies, all contributing to society. There were 15 from our first fund one, and we already have 11 in our fund two. And as you can see, we want to co-invest with all of you in the audience. We want to invest with partners that can also contribute to their project. And what we also make sure, and that's part of the best practice that I learned from our coach, is we have 50% of our fund dedicated for the reserve of our portfolio company. So we can do follow-on investments. And another important best practice is we never link an investment to a contractual engagement. But gosh, we work hard to make sure it happens, whether it's even before the investment or after the investment. We just don't link to that. And that's what leads to this TDK goodness, which is back to this why. We have this Chinese menu of a value add that we want to bring to the startups. And the way we look at TDK goodness, it's about accelerating the project and reducing the risk along the way for the entrepreneurs. But TDK goodness is not what we believe is valuable. It's what the entrepreneurs validate and confirm this is valuable to them. And if you see this photo, this is basically me on the first day of TDK acquiring my company. And you can see balloons and people welcoming us. I want entrepreneurs, when they join the portfolio of TDK Ventures, to feel welcome, as I was welcome into TDK. And that's also why we have so many entrepreneurs giving us raving testimonials, because even before we invest, and even if we don't invest, we are focused on adding value to their own projects. And so with that, I want to leave at least 7 minutes, I think, for Q&A.